Okay, hi everyone, welcome. We're just gonna let everyone have a couple minutes to get settled before we get started. So we're just gonna wait a little bit.
Sounds good. We probably have different time zones joining as well, huh?
Yes, definitely. So in the chat box, let us know where you are calling from. A lot of highs in there.
Nice.
Okay. All right, well, I'm gonna get started with an acknowledgement of country statement, and then I'm gonna introduce Work 180 and then hand it over to Robin. So I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which this event is taking place and pay our respects to Indigenous elders of the past, present, and emerging. Sovereignty has never been ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. I also recognize those whose ongoing efforts to protect and promote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures will leave a lasting legacy for future elders and leaders. Okay, so we're getting a lot of highs in the chat box, so let us know what land you are calling in from. So welcome to the Work 180 community event. So for anyone who is unfamiliar with Work 180, we are a jobs board with a difference. We're pre-screening employers on paid parental leave, pay equity, flexible working arrangements, and much more. This information is not publicly listed elsewhere and is an essential tool in your job search when assessing employers. So this space that you're in right now, this is our free community forum where we offer free career coaching sessions, which is what you are here for. So this space is safe. You can ask questions, offer your advice, meet and network with like-minded women. So we encourage you when this is done to stick around, ask some questions, see if you can help someone else out and get your question answers. So today we have Robin, who is one of our career coaches that we partner with. So you've probably seen her answering some questions in the forum. She has really, really outstanding advice. So we're so happy to have her here with us today. Use the chat box and I think Robin will do questions at the end of the session. Yeah, so you can use the chat box and then we'll save the questions for the end. But I'm going to put myself on mute and hand it over to Robin.
Thanks, Jenna. I'm so happy to be here. I found in my historical documents that I've been advertising Work 180 to job seekers for the last 5 years. And I have my own career coaching business here in Sydney. You can hear my accent. I grew up in America. I've lived in Australia for 15 years. I used to be an HR director here in Sydney, and I had other like technology jobs at banks, big banks, American Express, Bank of America, IBM. So I have learned a lot about LinkedIn over the years. I remember I opened my account in 2007 and wow, has it changed, and it's exploding. So I'm glad that you're all here. I think it really is a powerful tool for people to use. And I'm going to just, if you can get your skates on, I'm going to go quickly through the content, which should take me about 30 minutes. And then I'm happy to stay for another 30 minutes to answer questions. If you do really want to ask a pressing question during the presentation, I might not see it in the chat, but if you can ask at the end, I'm happy to field a bunch of questions. Okay. So in getting started, I'm just going to flip to my screen here. Thanks for joining. So I kind of broken into 4 sections, kind of with the importance of LinkedIn, all the value that it can give to you, a lot of tips that I share, very specific tips on your LinkedIn profile, but also how to leverage it for job searchers, and even for networking. So honestly, it would take a lot longer, but I know all of you are time poor and people really prefer things in bite-sized chunks. So I've tried to put the most important tips. What my goal for you today is that you'll come away knowing a couple of new things that you may not have already known. That was certainly the case for me. So just to give you a background, LinkedIn has 930 million users globally. 90% of recruiters use it. 12.7 million people in Australia, 49 million active job searches weekly, and 6 people are hired every minute. So that does not include other websites like Monster, Seek, Indeed. It's just on LinkedIn. So it's a pretty powerful tool, and it's really good to diversify your job search. I always encourage my clients to look in different places, including networking, but LinkedIn is really great for a number of reasons. So the first thing is it's great for networking, and studies have proven, and this hasn't changed over the years, that 65 to 70% of your jobs are found through your network. And I challenge you to make a list of all the jobs you've had and then ask yourself, did you respond to an advertisement, or was it someone, through word of mouth, or at your current employer, you were tapped on the shoulder to go to this other opportunity, and then maybe you followed the channel of applying, but generally it was because of your hard work and your reputation that you were tipped off that there was an opportunity becoming available. So that is still true. It's really important to use LinkedIn for networking. For job search, 6 people, that was a new fact that I just did research for in this presentation. So I was surprised. And I do go into like how to actually search for the jobs later on in this presentation. So I'll show you some reasons why maybe people would rather use LinkedIn versus the other sites. But then there's other sites as Work 180, which has a ton of job advertisements as well. So it's almost like I would help you prioritize where you look. And then for the notifications, that's another tool that is part of the platform that helps you keep in touch with people. People are very shy about, let's say, asking for a reference. But if you keep in touch with them and like send them a happy birthday message or just a one-liner, hope you're doing well, people appreciate that. You don't have to have this big, long conversation and catch up to still keep that connection warm. And LinkedIn allows you to do that. And then your profile is... this is astounding. So 85% of recruiters check you out on LinkedIn before deciding to call you. And that's true for them. They might see, are there any mismatches between your resume and your LinkedIn? They might want to look at your photo, see how good your photo is, or where your background, what different types of jobs. But it's really great for them to just gather more information. They also may look at your Facebook. But it's better to have no LinkedIn profile than a bad LinkedIn profile. So after this course, you're going to be so good. You're going to be able to touch up your LinkedIn profile and feel confident about it. Okay, so what is it used for? So many possibilities. So business to business. So a lot of us, like me, I'm a small business owner. So I interact with other small businesses, but there's also companies that use it for business to consumer. Which is what I do as well. But you can connect with past colleagues. That's the best way to build your network, is people that you used to work with. Just send them a note and just say, how you doing? And people appreciate that. So, and you can also network with strangers, and I'll give you some tips for that at the end. But you also can use your profile for recruiters. So I do hear a lot of people that get approached behind the scenes. So we'll talk about that and how that happens. You can apply for jobs directly from LinkedIn. You can participate in groups interesting to you, and then share information or just articles that you love. So it's really important. If you're looking for jobs in the corporate world, LinkedIn is quite heavily used. If you're looking for jobs in, it's probably more sporadic if it's in, let's say, education. I find it's like 50% of the teachers might have a LinkedIn profile, 50%. It's changing. I think the higher up you go in your career in education, then people I tend to see have LinkedIn profiles. Construction, that's hit or miss depending on the job titles. And hospitality, you don't see as much on LinkedIn. But for corporate office work, it is quite common nowadays. And so my theory is you can get 50 connections through your hairdresser, your barber, your kids' school, when you're standing on the sidelines watching the kids play rugby, soccer. You can go to a barbecue and you've got opportunity for a couple connections there. And so I always encourage my clients when they go to any type of networking event, a conference, just pick two people, two names that you can send them a LinkedIn message. Always personalize it, but you can send them a LinkedIn connection request. And that is another way to grow your circle. Okay, so the next parts are, we're getting into the mechanics of the LinkedIn profile. So there's a part in your LinkedIn profile that's called your headline, and it is often what people put their job title in that headline. And I actually encourage people to not do that. But I'll show you some examples in a second. Also, you have a photo. If you don't have a photo, it's kind of worth not having, it's not worth having a LinkedIn profile if you put it up and don't have a photo, because it makes it look like you're hiding something. Now, I work with an organization that I volunteer for, and there are refugees. I get that one. I get why they don't want to put up a LinkedIn profile or they don't want to put up their photo. But otherwise, people, the hiring leaders and employers might assume that you're hiding something. So it is better to have a great photo. And I'll give you some examples in a moment on what are good LinkedIn photos, what are bad ones. And then your work history is important. I do get asked, do you have to have all the details in your work history, like all the duties and responsibilities? I'd say that is not as important as the company name, the city and country where it was at. The job title is really what they're interested in, and the month, year start and the month, year end. Those are the critical details. It's up to you if you want to paste from your resume the work history. And then your about summary, which a lot of people don't realize they can leverage, but it tends to be the number one thing that recruiters will look at to get a feel for what type of person you are. So I'll go through how to write a great LinkedIn about summary. Okay, so getting into your headline, these are just some good examples. Rather than making your identity your job title, why don't you use some descriptors, professional problem solver, time traveler, storyteller, history geek, and museum lover. So this is a lady that I coach that she actually does freelance graphic design, and then she loves she's worked in a ton of museums as a tour guide or an assistant in the galleries. So that kind of gives a more a holistic view of her talents. And these are all real life. I ask permission of everybody, that real life headlines that people use that I went out on LinkedIn and looked for. So analytics enthusiast focused on driving environmental change, a content and copywriter specializing in plain English, publicist and PR mentor, lover of stories and doggos, lawyer, researcher, passionate about climate change. So there's just a little bit more personality, attention grabbing content in your headline. And that is what I would encourage all of you to do. And sometimes it might take a week or several days for you to kind of land on, and you might wake up and go, oh, I like this word better. So don't be afraid to change it and update it as so like at one point I was working for the board of directors of a not-for-profit. I was freelancing for another company and had my own career coaching business. So I don't want to just put career coach in that headline. I want to put a few descriptors that cover all of the things that I'm involved in. Okay, so these are good photos. So professional clothing, neat and clean, not too distracting in the background. This photo was taken, if any of you have iPhones, there's a option in taking photos that's called, why can't I think of it right now, portrait. And that is a great mode if you do have an iPhone to take self photos for your LinkedIn profile, and take it from different backgrounds if you want, decide which are best. It's a really good idea to take it at dusk when that light is warm, like 4 p.m. of the day, depending on what time of the year, but sunset, because that light is golden and it really makes you look healthy and happy. Always smile. I find a lot of migrants from other countries have these very stoic looking photos. If you look back in our old photos 100 years ago, a lot of people didn't smile in the photos because it wasn't the trend or the cultural norm, but it is very important that you're smiling. Even if you're not showing your teeth, you are smiling, because for those of you that grew up in Australia, I'm told about this sweet and sour game that kids would play in the car. So they'd be on a road trip with mom and dad, and they would look out the window and try to get another car, a driver, to smile. And if they didn't smile, they were sour, but if they did smile, they were sweet. And so that energy is something that you want to exude on your LinkedIn profile photo. You want to have that smile, because somebody will look at you and go, okay, she looks fun to work with. She might, be social in the workplace, but also not be too serious and stressed when things don't go to plan. So that photo says 1,000 words. These are all bad photos. I think they're pretty good examples. Nothing with partying or, busy background that looks like a party barge. Little bit sultry or sexy in that one. And then sunglasses. Those are all no's, bad LinkedIn photos, or especially if you cropped the photo. Like if you're got your arm around someone else and you've just cropped your head out of it, that looks a bit tacky on LinkedIn. So make sure you get a photo of you alone, and it's either got a white background or just a solid background or green trees. That looks really nice. And there's people that have done professional photos and spent a lot of money, and it does give them a good return, but it's not necessary for the majority of us. The smartphones can take beautiful photos of us, and just take it on a day where you're dressed up and you feel good about your hair, makeup, and your clothing. Wear a top that accents your eyes. I did a color analysis years ago, and it was really helpful to tell me, like, the reds are really good for me, the navies, but she actually told me, don't wear black. Black is not a good color, which is surprising. So so think about the colors in your eyes. Mine are green. So greens and blues, like all of the jewel colors, purples, those deeper autumn colors are good for me. Okay, now Leanne Shelton is a lady that I met just a few months ago, and so I asked her permission that I could use her profile as an example here. She has become a ChatGPT expert. She's only just started studying the topic this year and how people can incorporate it in their business. And so if you look at her, she's populated a lot of the unused areas in LinkedIn. So you can put a background border. Some people are so proud they moved to Australia, they might put the Opera House. That's okay. But you can see, like, she's got a few descriptors in her headline. So that's great. And then she kind of translates that into her identity. So you're writing it for that future person that might look. And then the location, please, please, please do not put in your LinkedIn profile, I live in Kellyville. So I would not put that specific postcode, because it limits your opportunities. I don't want to give an employer the right to decide whether I'm going to commute to Maroubra for a job. I'm happy to do that, right? So we don't want other employers to make judgments based on what city or suburb we live in. So always choose the greater Sydney, greater Melbourne, greater Perth area, because that makes you look more versatile, and it's not an objection for an employer who's looking at your profile. And then you can also change to your future location. Some of you might be living in a city, planning to move to a new city. So it's great that you can change to your new city while you're still in transition, and you can start looking for jobs in that marketplace. So it is a good idea, because recruiters will look at that and be more likely to call you if you're in their region. They're not as likely to call you if you're outside of that region, because there's too many other competition. There's too much other competition that people are right here that they don't want to waste the time. Make sure you customize your LinkedIn URL. I'm going to show you what I mean by that. And that's something I teach everyone to do. And it just, for those of you that are maybe HR workers, it shows them when they're looking at applications that you're just a little bit more savvy. And maybe a learner, that's a strength. I'm a strengths coach. So it just gives maybe that one little bit of polish. Be sure when you set up your LinkedIn profile, I've had 2 clients in the last month who set up a LinkedIn profile linked to an old job, and now they can't get into it because it's that old email address that's been shut down. You can get in touch with LinkedIn to fix those, but I've seen like 3 profiles for one gentleman, and that's confusing. So I went and researched LinkedIn help page so that he could contact them to delete the old profiles. But make sure you always keep it as your personal email because your jobs will change. And then one thing that I know as a fact is women get spammed with dating requests, and I hate it. And I believe you can report it, but I always encourage women not to share your phone number in the contact info. Maybe if it's a business, then you would share the phone number, but I would not make it easy for them to get that information. Sometimes you can elect to show the email once people connect with you. Anyway, there are privacy settings in there, so I would just protect your identity and your contact information in that case. And then you're welcome to choose, list all the channels. You can even list for some of the folks that are more artistic, you can list what we call a campsite website that shows like their artistic portfolio brochures or their website of the software development projects they've worked on. So it is okay to put all of those things in the contact info. And then the one thing that I wish we could change about LinkedIn is that it only allows you to choose one industry. I know they're always updating it and adding it, but it's a drop down. You can't see it on this screen. It's behind the scenes in your profile, but you have to be smart about which industry you want to attract in choosing that. And then only you can see that in edit mode. It's important because it appears not only in Google searches, but in the back office view that recruiters have in LinkedIn. So for those people that never reach out to an employer, but then they get a direct message from an employer saying, hey, would you be interested in this job? It's because that person and their company have purchased a LinkedIn premium employer account, and it allows them to kind of surf the profiles behind the scenes, which means you will never get a notification that they viewed your profile. So that's another reason it's really helpful to write a really strong profile. Okay, now this is how to customize your LinkedIn profile. So all of us, when we first open the account, it assigns us a unique URL for our LinkedIn profile, and it always, it generally lists your name in that profile, but then it follows it with like 7 digits. And so what I get a lot of people to do is to edit that so you can remove the digits. And if you have a common name like Ann Smith, you can do a few variations of that. You can put a hyphen, an underscore, a 1 or a 2. You can put your middle name. You can put, like PMI certification or something that makes it different. But once you go into the edit mode and then edit this URL, when you save it, it will tell you if that link has already been taken. If not, if it is, then you try again, something different, and then you save it. And that's really smart to put it in your resume and maybe your email signature if you're job searching, so they can just click on it quickly and get access to your information. So it really does look good on your resume. Okay, now this is the about summary that a lot of people don't realize is a tool that they can use on LinkedIn. And at the end of this presentation, I've got a link to an article that contains 14 wonderful LinkedIn profiles, and there are people that are all around the world. So I just grabbed 2 examples of their about stories to showcase for you today. But the one theme that all of them have in common is what I call a human voice. They have a little bit of their story, about their history or why they're good at what they do, a little bit about their values or their career evolution. And it's just very positive, very appreciative towards, what things they might have learned. And so these are 2 of those 14 examples of stories that actually got more engagement from people that needed them for services at their company, from recruiters that are looking for new talent, from employees that want to call them for job interviews. So the one thing that's really important is to put your story in there. Now, I realize some of you are cautious about doing this, especially if you don't want your current employer to know that you're looking. And so you can go in and make your profile not public, make it invisible. You can change that setting temporarily while you're doing all of this. So you have to go in the privacy settings in LinkedIn and do that. And then take the time to write out. And that way, when you turn it back live, no one gets a notification about that. But if they happen to Google your name or search for your name in LinkedIn, it still is visible. I don't know why. It doesn't generate the search. You know how you all get maybe notices from LinkedIn, like people you may know. So you'll be pulled out of those feeds. But if I do a direct search for your name while your profile is invisible, I could still find you. So unless you delete it, it's still out there, but I won't get notifications if I'm in your network, and I won't see that you're editing your about summary. But these are some really great examples of a story, and just 2 or 3 paragraphs is perfect. I always followed up with my clients. I have them list their top 5 Gallup strengths. If any of you are familiar with the Gallup strengths or the Clifton Strengths Finder, it's actually really helpful to choose the top 5 strengths that appeal to the employers and the jobs that you're looking for. So I think that's even another value add if you have taken that survey, which is I think it's $37 Aussie dollars. So it's cheaper in the US. So it's like $28 in the US, and then you get the survey back immediately. It takes 40 minutes, and it gives you a bit of a language as well to use in your interview. So I really value that for people that are low in confidence. They're bad about talking about themselves. It gives us a bit of language to use in our resume, career objective, in our LinkedIn about summary. So the strengths survey is a great tool for you to use. And then to summarize the do's and don'ts, you do want to tell stories. I actually teach people to do that in their resume as well. And that's why a lot of my clients are getting callbacks for interviews. Talk about what ignites your passion or what value you bring to an organization. Speak briefly about your career aspirations if you're comfortable, or even a little about your family or where you grew up. So for example, I had a man who was like a computer geek. He was like, yeah, I remember in being in the shop with my dad outside, in the garage, and I was pulling apart this alarm clock. And so we kind of wrote that into his introduction story in his resume and his LinkedIn profile. So it's a emotional connection that you're creating. You should write in first person. So I see some LinkedIn about summaries that say Robin is a great blah. It's almost like you're writing it in third person. You need to write it in first person as if I'm speaking. I'm a person that grew up in the US, but I've lived here in Australia for 15 years. So you have to use the I to create that story. And then do mention your achievements if you want. I wouldn't list the long list, because then people think, Aussies in particular might think you're full of yourself. So, maybe just a quick couple, especially if you're in a leadership position or executive leaders, you can put a couple of really cool achievements in your about summary. And then don't use technical jargon. You can use like programming languages or tools like architects use AutoCAD or things like that. But getting into more specific terminology, you'll lose the HR people that aren't technical. So you want to keep it high level. And then try not to brag. You're really just telling authentic stories. Try to make sure your profile is not outdated. So if it says you're still working, as a journalist, but now you've moved on to blog writing or something, make sure you've incorporated both of those things into your story. And then you can use 2,000 characters, but it doesn't have to be huge. Just a couple of paragraphs that gives them a taste of who you are. Make sure there's no typos in it though, because you might lose them if there's any spelling errors. So paste it into a Word document, spell check it, and then paste it back in. And you don't have to list every role you've had. Like generally I encourage people to just show the work history for the last 15 years. That's probably more a rule for the resumes. But if you don't want them to figure out how old you are, for, some of my clients are in their 50s and 60s, then we kind of remove some of that old history so that they don't deduce it from looking at your LinkedIn profile. Okay, now, why are they skimming your work history in your LinkedIn profile? It's because they want to see the variety of roles. They want to know, does it match your resume application? I've told a couple of clients recently, you told me in your resume you started this job in February, but on LinkedIn it says you started in March, which is correct. Those are reasons that they look for to throw out to basically reduce their pile of callbacks. So don't take that lightly, that your dates and your job titles, I've seen lots of variations in job titles between the resume and LinkedIn. They have to match. Cannot emphasize that enough. But they're also looking at the length in your roles. Did you get promotions? A lot of people are like, well, I only did that job for a short time and then I got moved to a more permanent role or, a different role. Those are really important messages to show that you got promoted quickly. So even if it was 3 months, 6 months, don't dilute that. Don't minimize that in your LinkedIn work history, like put the official jobs. And as a rule of thumb, those jobs should match. They should be verifiable employment with the employer. So if I'm an HR recruiter and I want to call that company that you worked at to verify employment, they can only give yes or no answers, but they can verify, yes, you had this job title. Yes, you had this job title. If it was different, like I know companies sometimes give you a terrible job title that doesn't match your work, then it is okay to put in the proper job title that was on paper, but then put in parentheses next to it what the real job title is. So you should be doing that on your LinkedIn, but also in your resume so they match. But they're also looking at your education, your volunteering. The volunteering is always great because it shows you're a good human being. And they do read your recommendations. So I saw an article recently that it was great to have like 6 to 8 recommendations. And it just depends on the type of role that you're applying for. But if you have a more skinny LinkedIn profile with not a lot of content, they would be more likely to read your recommendations. And recommendations are what people that you worked with write for you. So there's a funnel that they can write the recommendation. It gets routed to you in LinkedIn. You get to approve it or ask them to make changes if you wanted, and then you choose to publish it or not on that's linked to your profile. Okay, so on the job search, a lot of people don't know this, but if you use quotation marks and you type in your keyword search, you're going to get a more refined, narrow list. So a lot of times if you just type in business analyst, for example, without the quotation marks, you'll get a lot of jobs that mention an employer or a role that works with the business analyst. So you want to narrow down to true business analyst roles. And so that is helpful. And then you can save that job search alert so you can get daily alerts or weekly alerts that are in Sydney, or you can say work from home, so whatever you need. That's really helpful to set up your job search alerts. You can set up as many as you want, and you can turn them off too. So it's a really great tool for you to use because then you can go through your emails rather than checking online every day. The other thing is since the pandemic, LinkedIn has introduced this open to work indicator on your bubble. Now, before the pandemic, I used to discourage people, like particularly in their headline, they would say looking for work. And I would discourage people from doing that because the psychology of that is, oh, now you're calling out that they're unemployed. What's wrong with them? Then I'm going to go look at their last job they had. Oh, they haven't found a job for 9 months. What's wrong with them? So I don't love the open to work. I can see why it's beneficial to some people or some industries, Also, you may not want your employer to know that you're open to work. So you might be working full time, but you're looking for other opportunities. So I wanted to clarify for everyone that there's two ways that you can do this indication. So you can click on, if you go behind the scenes, so you click on the jobs tab. So this is the jobs tab, and then show recruiters you're open to new opportunities. Click on this. Then it opens up this little window. You can choose the metropolitan area you're looking. I'm looking immediately, or I'm casually, what type of role you're looking for. And then if you click on recruiters only, that means that only the select HR people at a business or the recruitment company can see your profile. So even if, let's say you work for a Commonwealth Bank, and you click on recruiters only, your manager or your boss is not going to have access unless they're in HR. They're not going to have access to that behind the scenes invisibility of profiles. And then if you want all LinkedIn members to see it, that's when it puts that open to work message on. And if you're loud and proud and you just got laid off, then go for it. Use that open to work window. Okay. And by the way, if you haven't been working, you can list in the work history a career gap. Maybe you did full-time study. Maybe you did overseas travel. Maybe you were caring for a parent. You can type all of that stuff in, and I've got lots of LinkedIn profile examples if you need them that show the reasons that they took a career break. But you can indicate that in your work history of your LinkedIn profile. Okay, and then in closing, I would encourage you to use LinkedIn when you get an interview. So research the employers, look at how many people work at the company. You can actually look where they live, like what city and where they studied. I'll show you this in a second. So it's a really great way to look at employers, look at how much they post. So maybe you can comment on that in the interview. How to connect. I always encourage people that if you send someone a LinkedIn connection request, always put a personal message in it, right? Don't send the generic, no personalization. So, really nice to meet you today. So glad that we could connect. Or, hey, I know we haven't spoken for a while, but I would love to connect with you. Hope you're doing well. And, you can keep it short and sweet. If it's a stranger, you have to pretend like it's a love letter. And you're only singling them out that you want to connect with them. So mention something that you noticed in their LinkedIn profile. I personally get spam messages every day of people trying to connect with me, sell me something, and I don't respond. But every once in a while, one of them catches my attention. They're like, hey, Robin, I noticed you did a webinar recently. And then I'm like, okay, they're paying attention. So make sure you write a very specific, tailored message to people that you truly want to connect with, and just ask them for advice. Maybe not even ask in that introduction connection, maybe wait a week or two after they accept your connection request and then ask, if they'd be willing for you to shout them a coffee, or you could ask to do like a 15-minute virtual chat. If they like you, they're going to look for other connections they can introduce you to. So it's just saying, I'm new to Australia, or I'm new to this space. I haven't looked for a job for 20 years. I would love to connect with you. I love your career profile and how you worked at XYZ. So that's how you approach strangers. It doesn't always work. Don't get upset if they don't respond. Some people don't check their LinkedIn profiles or their messages. But also be sure to check your privacy settings, because there's a lot more settings in LinkedIn now that you can decide if people can see your connections, for example, or they can see your photo, or they can see things that you like on your posts. So go through those options to determine what you want and what you don't want people to see. So this is the article. It's a hyperlink that I've inserted in the last slide of this presentation. So you guys can go out and look at the 14 profiles. I actually did check them all. This is a couple weeks ago, and I found only one of them customized their URL. So you guys have a bonus on that. And the other thing is that I found is that on LinkedIn, what was I going to tell you? So when I was talking about how you can research companies, can everyone see my LinkedIn screen right now? I'm hoping. Maybe you can't.
No.
No? Okay. Let's see. I've taken myself out of the sharing mode, but I think this is the icon. Okay. Anyway, so what I wanted to show you was on LinkedIn, when you click on that jobs tab, there's so much cool information that people can see that gives you a bit, like you can see how long the marketing person was in the role at a company. Or for example, we can look up Work 180 and we can see all the employees that have LinkedIn accounts that work for Work 180 and what cities they're in and where they studied. And you can see the posts that Work 180 is sharing on LinkedIn and the links to their Instagram or their other platforms. So it's just a really great tool that you can use for your research, for interviewers or for job searches. And with that, I'm happy to open it up for questions.
Thank you. That was great. I feel unprepared, like I should have researched my own LinkedIn profile before hosting this event, but I definitely got some good tips. Okay, so we're going to use the chat box. If anyone has any questions, if no one does, that's fine too. But yeah, we can just wait a few minutes to see if any come up in the chat box.
Some people, their internet froze, which is,
Yeah.
it happens, doesn't it? What other questions have I had that are off the mark? Some people have a big fear of creating a LinkedIn profile, and I get that. If you wanted to improve your percentage of success, if you had a LinkedIn profile versus not, most people would say, okay, I'll take the gain over the pain and create a profile. So having a tool like this that tells them the do's and don'ts for their profile, I think gives them more confidence to set it up. And when you set it up, you can keep it in the private view, not connect with people if you want. Should you add a resume to the profile? That's a good question. No, because you might always be updating it. I think it's different for Seek. Like you might keep it in there because then the employers use it more heavily. But I guess you can, when you apply for a job on LinkedIn, it does allow you to kind of create a similar profile. But I wouldn't, and you can attach your resume there, but I wouldn't attach your resume in your profile. I have seen people that do that. I guess if it's really stable and it doesn't change over the years, you could, but I don't really encourage it. Do you want me to keep going through these questions, Jenna, or they're firing off? Yeah,
Yeah,
you
we'll
read
keep
them.
going. Yeah, I'll let you take over. We'll keep going for
Okay.
15 minutes, and then we gotta cut it off. But
Okay.
we will obviously be sharing Robin's contact details. So if anyone
Yeah.
has particular career coaching questions, then that'll go straight to her. But I'll let you.
Okay, so one person said, is it a good idea to write the job title you're looking for, especially if you're a fresh graduate? No, you need to use my advice about using the descriptors, like super analytical wizard who loves biology, or whatever that your specialty is. I would write descriptors. And then in your resume, you need to have stories that you had in uni about projects you worked on and your contributions to those projects. So you don't want to misrepresent that job title by putting it ahead of ever having it, because most people are used to seeing job title in your work history. So you don't want to misrepresent that. That might turn them off. How to highlight your career change on LinkedIn with a positive approach. Honestly, it's much more common nowadays. And there's a term that I've been teaching 2 clients this week called a portfolio career, where you might have, a lady that works for New South Wales government. So she does like admin duties. Then she does blogging for a SEO company in Melbourne. Then she does marketing for me. And so that LinkedIn profile doesn't need to explain that you do, a variety of jobs. Like what is important is to say, oh, this is part-time or this is part-time. So they don't think you're mistyping your history by showing 3 full-time jobs. You can list under the job in LinkedIn, why you've pivoted, but I would make it a 1 sentence. Don't give them too much detail, because the more detail you give, the more they'll criticize your logic or your reasoning. And people just strangers don't have the right to judge your reasons. It could be because you haven't children, and there's a special needs child at home that needed more of your time, or it could be a parent that got sick. So just say, due to family issues, or I wouldn't elaborate any of that kind of stuff on your resume or in your LinkedIn profile. I missed the presenter's name. Robin DeLucia, Empower Coaching. So Google that. And you can see my name all over. So I'll just type it here. You can see my name all over the Q&A that asks for help in the forum for Work 180, and the business name is Empower Coaching. So, and I do put the link to my business quite a bit there. So I do 5-minute free resume reviews for people. I have webinars on there to, I did this webinar just a few months ago here, how to nail your job interview. Thank you, Jenna. Do you mention career gap due to illness or caregiving? Yes, especially if it's like 6 months. Sometimes, depending on the industry, I even have the career gap filled in for 3 months gap. But for 6 months or more, you should always put the career gap. It's okay. Aussies in particular are really good about, they don't care as long as you explain it. It's family care leave, maternity leave, travel. And then I actually get people to list, I went to Thailand and China and Japan for 6 months. Like, people, Aussies are great travelers, so they don't judge negatively. What else? There could be full-time study, or there was family illness or something. I just, again, would keep it extremely brief on what that career gap reason is. May I have your PowerPoint slide? Yes, we are going to be sharing the playback in an email. Probably might not be till tomorrow, and then we're going to share the link or the present. I'm happy to share this presentation with all of you as well. Let's see. Is it a good idea to contact startups for non-advertised roles? How do you go about it? Okay, I was talking about this to a client yesterday, and he loved the idea. He's American, though, but he said, oh, I'd be delighted. He lives in Newcastle, which is kind of a smaller town. He's like, I would be delighted to bring my resume in, print it out, bring it to the business place. You're never too pushy, like, can I speak to the HR person now? So you can't assume that you can get on their calendar without a pre-agreed schedule. But what you can do is drop off that printout of your resume, tell the receptionist, because it's really good to build a good rapport with whoever you talk to, I'll be back, or I'll be in touch later. Just say later, and then follow it up a week later. Always make sure you're dressed nice. I have people occasionally, I get them to send a snail mail. So I actually get them to print out their resume and put a cover letter in it to the employer. It might be kind of more customized cover letter that says, here's why you need me. And I get them to put a stamp on it and send it to the CEO or the head of HR, and it gets opened. Like, nobody gets snail mail at work nowadays. So that is a very effective way to get noticed. So great question. Yes, you should go to startups, particularly because they're not paying the big bucks to advertise their jobs. They would prefer to save the money. So yes, it's always good to go in and introduce yourself. You may not be hiring right now, but I wanted to tell you I love what your company is doing. I would leave a letter and a copy of your resume as well. I'll stay in touch with you if that's okay. And then just keep coming back every couple of weeks, or send an email, and just always be polite. Thanks for your time. Thanks for reading this. But if you keep having that positive contact, they will go, oh my gosh, I like this person. People have been rejected for jobs, and they still send a really lovely note saying, look, I understand why I wasn't selected, but I really want to say thank you for the time. And then they'll get the call back like a week or two later because they were so lovely in that message. So don't be shy about doing that. Startups are really good. They're better about doing like face-to-face networking. So yes, it's a good idea. Career change tips. Please go through.
Read that one for you. If I
Okay.
am changing careers and want to connect with strangers to learn about the industry and what I need to enter the new industry, are there networking groups on LinkedIn I can search to connect with people in the industry?
I would, there's not networking groups, but there are industry groups that I would start following and reading the articles about what's happening in the industry. And particularly, I would be following the employers you would love to work for and what things they're writing about, not only on LinkedIn, but some websites, company websites have like media releases and stories that they're sharing. So the way that it's very, I will tell you, it's very tough to get through strangers on LinkedIn. And I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but you almost have to pretend like you're writing a love letter. And you're very constrained by this love letter because I think you have in the connection request with that stranger, you're capped at 300 characters. So you have to write a very succinct love letter that says, hey, I know you don't know me, but I found your profile and oh my gosh, I love that you did architecture, archaeology, and now you work at, environmental sustainability business. I'd love to find out more about your career. I'm new to Australia or I'm new to this industry. Could I interest you in like a 15-minute Zoom or virtual chat, or could I shout you a coffee? I'll come to your workplace. And people, I do this for my clients. I reach out to strangers sometimes because I may not know someone in that specialty area, and they do respond to me. So it's not 100%. And I do reach out, like a few months ago, I was reaching out for like some big power communications people at different businesses. And I did get 2 people that responded to me and one lady that did say, yeah, sure, I'll meet with your client. So the higher the people up, you can tell that they're more likely to give back to others. And if you read their profile and it's warmer and more empathetic and more mentoring like language, they are the ones that are going to be more likely to agree to meet with you, give you advice. But always ask for advice. Never, ever ask for a job. So you're just asking for career advice. I used to work in China, now moved to Australia, but LinkedIn has quit in the China market. Oh, I didn't know that. And how should I create my LinkedIn account? So if you go to my website, there's a whole section on LinkedIn, and there's a video on how to create your profile. There's a video on how to customize your profile. These slides will also give you a lot of good content to create your LinkedIn profile from start, and make sure you use your personal email. That's, the one that you've used for the longer amount of time. Is there other questions that I missed?
I think we got them all. If you missed your question, then please copy and paste it. Can we wait a couple of minutes? But yes, we will be sending a follow-up email with the recording of this webinar, the slides, Robin's details. And yeah, please tell like your friends and colleagues and your family members that this space is free for you. So we hope that, you spread the word. Okay, Matthew, how can I send a LinkedIn message to strangers? Do I have to pay for an account?
Oh, this is a good question, Matthew. So a lot of people ask me, should I get LinkedIn Premium? I've never found value in it. If you're in sales, maybe, but it does give you a little bit more access to people's profiles that are private. But generally, a lot of people's profiles that are private are like HR people that don't want to be bothered. So for most people, it's open that you can send them a connection request. It's not blocked. In other words, there's a very small percentage that can block you from even sending a connection request. But in this connection request is how you connect to strangers. And that's where I'm saying you write the love letter in the 300 characters or less. So you have to choose your words wisely, but always reference something unique in their profile so they don't think you're spamming them. And no, you don't have to pay for a LinkedIn account.
Amazing. Okay, so I just posted a link in the chat box to the webinar recording. So obviously this one is not there yet, but you can see all our previous webinars and it'll be there as soon as possible. Okay, we'll do one more question and then we'll jump off. I have heard it's important to customize the CV based on the job description. So do we also need to keep updating our LinkedIn accordingly? That's a good question.
I personally don't recommend people have more than 2 customized CVs, and that's more job specific. So you, for one CV, you might have project engineer, and for another CV, it's civil engineer. So one's very technical, one's very people leadership oriented. And so your job history should remain the same regardless of your CV, like it's truthful representation. So no, I don't agree. I don't believe you should be having to customize your LinkedIn, especially you shouldn't be changing job titles or removing some jobs for one application and other jobs for like represent your work history truthfully. And then LinkedIn, if you're looking for 2 types of jobs, I would make it all inclusive so that you're not having to update it all the time. Sorry, Emma, you're saying no, we shouldn't customize our CV for every job. I just think that's too much stress
I
and
think
work for people.
Emma is saying, should we post about going on maternity leave?
Oh, gotcha. No, I wouldn't post about
Mhm.
it. You're still an official employee of the company. Sometimes when ladies are doing their resume after they've returned from maternity leave, they put that in the middle of their job history. I get them to take it out like you're still an employee. It doesn't matter that you took a 9-month or a 1-year break. You're still working at that business and you're on the HR payroll. So no, you don't need to post about it. In fact, even if you're interviewing and you're, I don't know, 12 weeks pregnant, I would not be mentioning it either because things could change and it's illegal for them to discriminate against you. So I wouldn't give them the ammunition by telling them that you're planning on maternity leave. Okay. Well, that's all. I
Okay,
know,
one
Jenna,
more.
it's late
One
in your
more.
evening. Oh, okay.
That's okay.
It's late in your evening, so
Patricia,
I feel
and then we'll
bad.
say goodbye. Patricia, what is a good way to write achievements on LinkedIn?
Look, there, if you go on my website, I go into the mechanics of writing a really great achievement, like how to use the past tense verbs, how to use the STAR framework in the achievement, where you worked, what was the task or problem you had, what was the actions or contributions, and what was the result. So that's a really good way to write an achievement. But I break that down more on my website in the I have a resume blog. I've got a whole section on resumes and achievements, and yeah, that also helps you prepare for interviews as well.
Amazing.
What is the
Okay.
important top tips? Career transition. Know your strengths. So for me, it's important for my clients to do their Gallup strengths profile, and then we use that as a bit of a recipe. We use a couple of other tools as well to find out what are the right jobs that make you happy and allow you to do what you're good at. And so that's, people take it for granted. Some of their strengths, they overlook them. And so I think it's healthy to go to a career coach to do some sort of profiling before you make decisions on your next career move.
Amazing. Okay, well, feel free to like hang around in the forum space and ask questions. You can message Robin directly or go on her page and find her email address. Otherwise, wait for our email. And yeah, I will. I don't know, Robin, anything to say? Otherwise, I'll end this on this.
I just want to say thank you, Jenna, because I know you're in a different time zone and it's late for you. So thank you for staying with us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. All right, thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
All right. Have a good day. Bye.